Are the present leadership programs creating leaders or followers? For moderating the discussion, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Mayank Sengar. Mayank is a second-year student of IIM Udaipur and an active member of Saksham, the Entrepreneurship Club, and Prayatna, the Social Responsibility Club of IIM Udaipur. Mayank, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Shobhika. Good afternoon, everyone. Second panel discussion of the day, Rethink Approach. Are the present leadership programs creating leaders or followers? Let me invite our esteemed panelists on stage. Our first panelist, Mr. Ashwin Parashram, Head HR and IR, Reliance Industries Limited. Our second panelist, Mr. G. Ravi Shankar, President of Human Resources and Strategy, CRISIL Limited. And our third panelist, Mr. Prabhu Agrawal, Chief Learning Officer, Jindal Steel and Power Limited. I would like to set the context of discussion here. Who is a successful leader? A successful leader is a one who knows where a company's industry is heading and how to respond. A charismatic individual fostering teamwork at all levels. A person who can align individuals behind a single vision and strategy and turn the ship when it's time for a new direction. In the current global business environment, the attitude towards building in-house leadership has changed drastically over the last decade. Organizations are under fear of running short of leadership talent. To remedy this, organizations are taking many steps to build a pipeline of qualified leaders. So either these steps are creating competent leaders who are trendsetters or just a pipeline of followers. Leadership development programs of top business schools and established in-house programs of reputed organizations, are they in a position to cater to the growing demand of leaders from Generation Y? We would like to explore some of the prime aspects of forementioned challenges with this panel discussion. First, each panelist will be invited to share their thoughts on the topic for approximately 5 minutes. Then we'll have a moderated discussion for 45 minutes, and post that, I'll open the floor for audience questions. First, I would like to invite Mr. Ashwini Parashram to the podium to share his insights with us.
Thank you, Mayank. Professor Shah, Mr. Nagraj, I am Udaipur. First and foremost, a very, very warm thank you for having me over. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be here. And now that you've invited me over, you need to kind of tolerate me for the next hour and a half. Ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed panelists, others in the room. Before I start, Mayank, I'm going to seek a little bit of indulgence. Should I spill over my 5 minutes? Indulge me for a minute or two. Beyond that, please ask me to stop. Because when I get a captive audience, and I don't get this often enough, I don't tend to let go of easily.
Sure, sir, we are good to go.
Okay. So let me try and walk you through a couple of slides I kind of put together. And the only reason I put these slides together was I'm getting on in years, and at times tend to forget what I'd kind of scripted to say.
Sir, we have a technical glitch with the
We have a technical issue, okay, no problem. We will work through the technical issue. But on the very subject of are the programs today really creating leaders or are they creating followers? My view, and this is purely my view, is it is not the programs that create the leaders and the followers. It is really the environment in the organization. It is the environment that exists, that helps nourish the leaders. It helps the leaders to come through. It lets the leaders bloom. The programs only facilitate inputs. They help provide some direction. The leaders themselves have the larger role to play. And I dare say the leaders of today in a large part are the impediment to developing leaders. If we can get the slides going, it will help. Otherwise, maybe what I might want to do is request Ravi or someone to come and speak here while I walk the others through the slide in the interest of time.
Sir, I think we can run with the slide after resolve.
Sorry?
We can run with the slide after they resolve the things. We can proceed. We can have you after 5 minutes again.
Yeah, okay, all right, good. Indeed. Sorry about that.
Mr. Prabhu Agrawal to the podium to share his thoughts on the topic.
I was hoping, Ashwini, you would take the half an hour and would have covered all the points and I would have nothing left to talk about. So I'll still leave a lot of room. So the topic today is a rethink on this idea of leadership development programs. Are the leadership development programs today really creating leaders or followers? And I have no scripted thoughts about it. And I could not actually agree with more with what Ashwini said. That at the end of the day, it's the culture of the organization and the environment that makes it all happen. You know, since morning from Professor Maheshwari's talk that set the agenda today and the discussion that happened in the first panel, a lot of topics were discussed from social media to engagement. So now we're talking about leadership development. And in terms of leadership development, when I came to JSPL about 2 years ago, and I've mostly had an academic career prior to joining the corporate world. So it's an interesting thing that I'm now in a laboratory environment where I've been testing a lot of theories. I'm using all the corporate employees as guinea pigs and trying to see what works or doesn't work. But I'll give you a couple of examples. So I'm comfortable if I need to move, I will. So what I observed in corporations, and particularly in our corporation, leadership development was by accident. That's how I like to term it now. We had a leadership development program by accident. Meaning what? We did 42,000 man hours of training 2 years ago. And we did an audit. And we were trying to figure out, was the right program given to the right employee at the right time? Do you have any idea what that number might be? Yeah, that's actually just 4.3%. 4.3 people, 4.3% of the people were in the right program at the right time, you know, for the right topic. So, as somebody said in the first panel, February, March comes, I think Professor Maheshwari is mentioning, he gets frantic calls at IIM. Oh, kuch program, we need to do something. You know, my KRA, my PMS is coming up, I'm falling short. So, is that leadership development? So that was one aspect that I just wanted to highlight. So, the second question that is also in the theme is, are we creating followers and leaders? Well, honestly, now at the helm of a company which is 25,000 people, a 40,000 crore company, I think I need both. This is another conclusion that I've drawn. I don't think I need everybody to be a leader. So I actually do want a few followers. But that followers don't necessarily have to remain followers for their entire careers. So I'll honestly answer this question two ways. I'll say I need very customized and tailored programs. Some that create the right followers and some that create genuine leaders. Now, again, the definition of leadership and leaders is also all confusing, right? In the corporate world, Do I want leaders that inspire me, that I, or from my perspective, I look at leaders as people who can deliver on business results as my first and foremost criteria. So what my thought about leadership development is that you cannot have a leadership development program which is by accident. It has to be very, very deliberate. Now, harping back to the thought that you just shared, the biggest impediment to leadership development today is the existing leaders. That is quite true. We have had a history where current leaders have done an extremely poor job of creating their next line of successors. So, what we need is a leadership development program that's very, very closely aligned to a company's business strategy. Now, we as companies do an extremely good job, most often, of articulating where we want to be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line. Very good job, very deliberate, very well thought out, but the people's strategy is nowhere in concert with that. So a leadership development program needs to be very deliberate in aligning the people's strategy, the leaders' strategy, to this business strategy going forward. And a key element is top talent management, and a key element is succession planning, at least for that critical roles. And it is very important that the right people get selected. And there is a deliberate plan of what we are going to do with these right 50, 100, 150 people. Okay? You can talk about the tools, you can talk about their validity, from assessment centers to potential to performance to 360 feedbacks, a combination of tools, perceptions, talking to managers, talking to senior leaders. But honestly, there is some sense somewhere that N-1, N-2 people are there, but there is no deliberate plan to create a path for them. So if we are able to create a path and deliberate interventions, which are a mixture of rotations, which are a mixture of high-end exposure, if we are going to go into the global markets, making sure they have the relevant global experiences, preparing them in line with our business strategies over the next 2, 3, 4 years, even mixing it up with outside hires. We have realized that we cannot achieve our goals of leadership development and succession planning internally. So something like 30%, 40% of the positions are clearly earmarked for outside hires. And we are deliberately now going into the direction where we are going to pursue those hires to develop our leadership pipeline. So we cannot depend on leadership programs to solve our problems. On the followers part, one of the very important issues are that the values of the company and the culture are the DNA. And there is absolutely no room to play with it. And I was telling some of the students that were interacting with me over lunch that we absolutely have no room for what I call brilliant jerks. And those companies that tolerate brilliant jerks are playing with fire. So I have been harping with my senior management that the values should become our mantras. We need followers when it comes to our values. We have to have large-scale interventions, and we have to live those values, and we have to demonstrate those values. And the only way in our organization that these values can be demonstrated is by letting go of people who don't demonstrate those values. Nothing else can work. So I don't know if I'm going to be open to a lot of discussions. So the issue of followers and leaders, I think, are equally important. We need people following. We need people executing in our industry. We need to give them future career paths. We know those people who demonstrate a willingness, are engaged, show the passion, the zeal to be in our industry. We are targeting a 3 times top line growth in the next 6 years. We are an extremely fast growing organization. We have realized 24% annual growth rate over the last 11 years. So we are an organization that grows too fast. Generally, people and processes and systems are not able to catch up that quickly. So we are struggling with some of these issues. I think leadership development plays a very important role, but I don't think we can have one-size-fit-all programs. We have to be very targeted, very deliberate in what we are trying to achieve, and I think that's how I would like to sum it up.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable thoughts. We invite Ashwini Prasad, sir, to the podium. You have the presentation ready.
Thank you. I was hopeful I have very little left to say. So, truly very, very invigorating. Before we actually get into discussing the subject about whether the present leadership programs are actually creating leaders or followers, I thought it would be important to pause for a moment and get some context on what do we really mean by leaders. And we just heard, the definition of leadership is all confused. So I'll try and attempt to share with you what I would like to believe is a leader. Now let's respect this fact that any leader per se would be great at all the traits that we saw in the morning session, which Professor Maheshwari laid out. You have to have that. And while we got mean scores and stuff like that, he did talk about leaders who are really up there. And leaders who are really top of the tops would score 4.5 plus on each of the traits that we saw on the presentation this morning. Even if we were to look at some of the people on this slide, and this is just a representative sample, don't ask me the question, why is someone else not on this and why is someone on it and not off it? Everybody would have had some distinction to share. For instance, if we were to look at Kapil Dev, absolutely inspirational, right? How he had this die-hard attitude to say even with a 183 score on the board, they could take on and beat the West Indies. They did so. You look at someone like Hitler, strong belief, right, that I will win the world. He didn't go on to do that, but he had a strong belief that he would do it. You look at someone like Steve Jobs. A lot of people in their lifetimes would call him a maverick, but someone who did not believe about taking on the competition. He just thought about changing the way the world looked at technology. So every single leader would have had what I would like to call a star kind of insight, which they lived with and they worked with. Sardar Patel, he had this huge conviction ability, right? How to influence people, how to, and the means that he may have used with some of the people may not necessarily go down very well. But the fact of the matter is he did influence and ensure that all the princely states did not really go different directions at the time. And you stayed united to the degree that you did. Of course, we did go to a partition, but it wasn't several partitions which was likely to kind of happen. So every single one of them would have a streak which would be their core area, which would really be, what would make them prima donnas. And most leaders who would be really top of the line would have all the traits that we saw in Professor Maheshwari's presentation. However, when we talk about leaders having to develop others, and I mentioned this earlier, it's not leaders who develop it, right? It's the environment which leaders facilitate it. But even for leaders to facilitate it, what I would believe, they need to have 6 things. You cannot have a leader who does not have vision. And vision is not about I, me, myself. It is not about doing things in the short term and winning those stripes on my shoulder or on the leader's shoulder. It is about seeing through what is the legacy that you're going to leave behind. You may not be there to enjoy that legacy, but great leaders think about the legacy that they want to leave behind. And that to me is vision. Leaders help define boundaries. They don't create bureaucracy. They help define a broad operating boundary for people to help them nurture, grow, flourish, and not breathe down their neck. So in addition to all the traits, to my mind, if a leader does not display some of these characteristic traits, it does not make a great leader, because he or she will never leave the legacy behind. He or she will do great stuff, will be recognized as someone who was outstanding, but in my dictionary does not make the great leader definition. Again, great leaders, to my mind, connect with the heart and they build trust. Again, something which is exceedingly difficult to do. We would like to believe it is easy. Trust me, it's not. And I'm using the word trust me, it's not. To have the trust of the people to blindly, follow a certain direction. To have the trust that my leader will not let me down. To have the trust that when the brickbats come, my leader will be there to stand in front of me, is a huge ask for people who have to grow into leaders. Okay. They provide direction. They show you what the end goal is. If you have to get to Delhi, you cannot be headed towards Trivandrum. They just point you in that direction. They don't take you there. They've defined the boundaries, they point you in the direction. And it is a shared, it's a co-shared direction. It's not something on the lines of my way or the highway. Because if you don't co-share it with the people that you work with, you will never get them there. The fifth piece really is they display empathy. And we often tend to confuse this with sympathy. It's not sympathy. Empathy means listening carefully. Empathy means trying to appreciate the other's point of view. Empathy means trying to understand and truly recognize what the other person is trying to say. And finally, and this is not necessarily in this order of priority, lead by example, characteristic traits. And leaders, and it is great leaders who help facilitate, grow leaders. Today's programs, I dare say, are not comprehensive, they are not cohesive, they are in bits, fits and starts, and at best, they just touch the tip of the iceberg. I don't think we have a complete cohesive program where we can create the environment, we create the culture, and we have leaders who believe in doing this to help nurture further leaders. I'll end with a couple of quotes from Tom Peters and John Maxwell. I don't need to say who they are, but they truly exemplify what leaders really mean. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to invite Mr. G. Ravishankar to the podium to share his thoughts on the topic.
Thanks, Mike. Coming in after two very impressive and insightful thoughts on the topic, I try and keep this brief and try and link it to what is being said already. So, there are two issues that I want you to talk about largely. Firstly, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to comment on whether the programs are creating flaws. I think going back to what Professor Sunil Maheshwari said this morning, I totally agree with that. It is a serious challenge today in the corporate world. I think what is really stopping you or what is really holding you back from doing better is really the lack of a good leadership pipeline. I think if we had better leaders or more accomplished leaders, I think we can do much more. It is not lack of business opportunities, it is lack of enough leadership talent. So if that is the issue, then if you sort of step back and see what is really causing that issue, and whether the programs today are designed to really deliver that for us going forward. I will step back a little and try and decipher what are the elements of leadership, and there's a lot of literature available on this. My fellow panelists have spoken about it. I like to refer to Nitin Noria's definition of the elements of leadership, and he's written a book on this, and I once attended a lecture from him, and I found that to be the most sort of simple explanation of what are the elements of leadership. So he talks about three elements. It talks about the knowing of leadership, the doing of leadership, and the being of leadership. The knowing of leadership is the cognitive ability. It is about understanding your context. So, are you able to connect the dots? Are you able to figure out what's going on in the industry? How good are you at figuring that out? And how good are you at figuring out what is to be done, which is what is your strategy going to be? And this element is the first element. The second element, which is the doing, is once you've decided what has to be done, can you deliver it? Can you take it to completion, which is the execution part of it? And the third element, the being of leadership, is how do others experience you as a leader? What does it mean? If, for example, if you get into a room full of people, are you able to relate to them in a very powerful way? Are you able to communicate to them? Are you able to get them to believe in what you're saying? Do people experience you as an authentic leader? Or are you putting on an act? So all of these, I think, play a very important role in your being a successful leader. So if you look at these three elements, why I spoke about these is because, if you're looking at leadership development, what elements of these are, are ones which you can invest in and drive some change and look at some results. I think if you look at the first element, which is the knowing of leadership, it has to do a lot with your cognitive abilities and the intellect. I think that is something that cannot be, it is not something that you can achieve through leadership development programs. What you can definitely do is, if people come in with a certain level of intellectual capability, you can build on processes, you can build on strategic thinking capabilities, you can build on some judgment around that, but you can't really take the IQ level up. So I think if the attempt is to do that, then it's an issue. You really have to be able to judge who are the people who are going to be able to do it, and then invest in some programs which will help you to sharpen some of those capabilities. Now, even when you're investing in that, I think how do you, what is critical is that, for example, if you look at strategic thinking, if you do a workshop and if you let people go back to their work on Monday morning, it is pretty much that. People listen to you in the workshop and they will go back to the way they were working earlier. So if that has to be successful, it has to be very tightly linked to what you're going to do on Monday morning. What does it mean? In a strategy workshop, for example, if you come into the program, you're a business leader, you come into the program saying that my assignment is to finalize strategy for my group. And then you walk into the workshop, you go through the workshop, the outcome of the workshop has to be your strategy, which has to be presented back to your management team or whatever. And then you execute that. So unless the stakes are high for you and unless there is a linkage back to your work, the program is not going to work. It's pretty much, like they say, in classroom it's going to be 10% is what you're going to absorb. Unless you are going to practice it over and over again, you're not going to be able to develop that capability. So this first element, to a certain extent, it is learnable, but it needs practice, it needs to have the context, it needs to be sort of linked back to your work environment. The second part, the doing, I think is the one where you can make the maximum difference. There are a number of models available, whether it's project management, stakeholder management, etc., which can be taught and which can be learned. I think people show a significant movement in this particular aspect of their their leadership traits. And I think this is also an area where, if you look at across a set of leaders, you potentially see that they're the strongest in execution. And I see that in my company. I see that when you evaluate leaders, execution is the characteristic in which they come out the strongest. The other two, there are gaps in the other two. So this is, again, like I said, this is the one where interventions work. They also need to be aligned very strongly to what they do on Monday morning. But it is something where we have seen significant movement of the leader. The third element, the being of leadership, I think is the toughest. This is something that people usually, find it very, very hard to make a difference in terms of how they deal with people and how they come across to people. So Professor Shah was talking about yesterday. He was talking about the EQ test that they do here, and I think that will go a long way in building awareness. Typically, what happens is that people climb certain steps, and then you realize that they have very low EQ and they cannot relate to people, and then it is too late to do anything about it. You know, so you start early on that. It will potentially be very, very useful. And I think, from my experience, this has been the hardest element to change. It doesn't mean that it can't change. You can minimize the damage that it can create, but making a very big shift in this is very, very difficult. So what does it mean really in terms of the programs? I think what the first element, like I said, doable but needs a lot of planning. The second element, very much doable. Third element is the difficult part, and which is why I guess we are kind of struggling somewhat to have good programs. The one alternative that I see to all of this, and which is a really strong way of developing good leaders, is to give experiences. What do I mean by that? Can you create roles which are extremely challenging? So for your high potential people who you see going very far in the organization, early on, can you give them roles which will challenge them? And you put a safety net under them, saying that, look, if you fall, I'll catch you, but you've got to go and figure out. So you give an entrepreneurial role, and just to give you an example from my firm, we were setting up an office in Argentina in 2007, and it was a completely new territory for us. We had we didn't have an office in South America at all before that, and we sent somebody who was a 30-year-old to that office, and we said, you be the country head, and we set this operation up. So that person, after 3 years, I think he's matured so much, and he's learned so much in those 3 years that potentially no leadership development program would have ever sort of given him that kind of experience. So those are the accelerated sort of I would say crucibles where you learn a lot. You learn stakeholder management. You learn strategy. You learn how to relate to people, how to manage circumstances. All of that. So I think that is really a very, very useful way of giving people experiences. But you have to make sure that there is a safety net below them, because if you don't do that, people will find it difficult to take on those risky roles. So that's my 2 bits on this, and happy to take more questions.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Sir, we have looked at the various traits of the leaders, and we have also looked into how organizations top leadership will is actually impacting the leadership development programs within organizations. So I would like to go forward with that thought, that how crucial is leadership development in enhancing competitive advantage in the current competitive environment? Can you?
There's no question about the fact that leadership development is critical and crucial. But like I've said before, I think what is more important in today's context is for the organizations to really focus on seeing whether they actually have an environment which is there to nurture these young leaders. I think that is critical. I think we often tend to ignore this environment context or the cultural context, or whatever context you want to put it. Talk about that kind of context. And what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that people who had their innings need to gracefully learn to step aside. They need to get into mentoring roles. Nobody is saying, and it's a two-way process, right? From the top leadership perspective, you're always thinking about, if this guy goes away, my organization is going to be at risk. On the other hand, the incumbent himself, nobody wants to let go. I think it's just an inherent thing. And where people have actually stepped into advisory roles in the true sense of the word, you really see people are. And this example is a great one of sending somebody to Argentina at the age of 30. Now, if you had a meaningful discussion, would they, around the table, and you had 10 people in the room and said, who's the best guy for the job, that age would have certainly come into play in some form or the other. Especially when you're looking at larger roles, especially when you're looking at roles which are steady state roles, which might be seemingly at risk if placed in the hands of a younger one. My belief is that end of the day, if you give the challenge to somebody who's, let's say, skip decade, a decade younger, nothing's going to go wrong. 9.9 out of 10, you will not lose out. So yes, the leadership development bit is extremely important to focus on. More critical is the environment that you need to work on creating.
Sir, we have looked to the initiative that General Dhruva also has shared about the general initiative. So I would like to know the best practices which are followed in Reliance Industries Limited and also in CRISIL Limited in terms to promote the leadership development and how you are planning to further enhance and to achieve better results out of those.
Alright, looks like Bofors 47 is trained on me right now. I think what we are doing is we are getting into some very aggressive succession. I think when I say aggressive succession planning, we are getting into skip decade succession planning, which means if you have today, let's say, 55-year-old heading a major function, you're saying, why can't a 45? And let us find that 45 to do it. And again, the propensity is normally to tend to go scurrying outside and say we have no talent inside. They're pushing aggressively to say, look at the internal talent, and rest assured you will find people who will be able to take that talent. It's just that we've been risk averse, right? We've been risk averse to such a degree that we've not really wanted to have. So we're doing that. In addition to that, obviously, you're working on whatever is required to be done in terms of providing exposure that we talked about, providing a holistic kind of framework, providing different kinds of exposure. So if you have one person working in one plant, traditionally you had that person stay in that same plant, perhaps retired from that same plant. Now you're saying no, let the person rotate. Does not matter if he does not understand the technology. He's got a technology background, right? He might take 3 months more, but there is intrinsic value in investing in those 3 months and being patient with it so that he understands multiple plants as opposed to staying with one plant kind of exposure. So those are some things that we are kind of aggressively doing. In the past, we've done things very differently again in terms of building leadership. And I'll just take a moment to share one such example. We built the largest refinery in the world, right? Largest gas refinery in the world. Now, building a refinery can give you a huge adrenaline rush. And we had some of the best engineers who worked with us by building the refinery. But when you started, having built the refinery, running the refinery, all of a sudden, all these engineers who were there felt very kind of queasy. Because it is not the same challenge, right, running the refinery as building one. So we needed to provide an alternative to them. And what did we do? We engaged at that point in time with IIM Bangalore, got them to put a very intense 4-month truncated MBA program together. We let IIM Bangalore run their independent selection process. We called it the managerial program for Reliance engineers. We did not interfere with the selection process. They went through a mini CAT, etc. They cleaned the desktop drawers out before they went to campus. We had senior leadership fly in every week to contextualize what they had done in terms of theoretical learning. So if they went through finance in week 1, we had our CFO go and spend half a day with them. And after 4 weeks or so, they got into jobs which was not what they were doing earlier. They were a level higher, at least, not 2, and it was dramatically different from what they were doing. So those are the kind of pieces that we are again looking at in terms of formal programs to kind of provide this. But other than that, very aggressive succession, and also trying to provide cross-functional exposure or cross-exposure on a accelerated basis. In addition to everything that most companies do, like investment cadre building of different kinds at different levels, induction of talent, etc. I'm not getting into that standard stuff that every corporation needs to do.
So we do a few things, and just to give a sort of overall picture of what is the population we are looking at. I think the key is to get the definition of what you're doing right. So the way we look at it, we say there is a key talent which is a certain level and above, and we have a separate cadre called the young leader cadre. So between the two of them, we have 6% of our people in those two categories, 3 and 3. So the young leaders is the pipeline that feeds into the key talent. And key talent are the people who take on the key positions at senior levels. Within key talent, there are two categories that we have. There's a category which we call as high potentials, where people who will move up 2 levels in 5 years are categorized as the high potentials, and there are high performers who are doing extremely well in their current roles, but will potentially not move up unless something changes very significantly as far as their overall performance traits. So once you sort of got down to these specific 3% and 3%, then you have different programs that are sort of targeted at both levels. So if you take just a key talent program, we have an individual development plan for each of them. So you do an assessment, you figure out what they need, you assign a coach, you send them to certain programs. It's very, very targeted to each of them. But at the center of all of this is our rotation program. So each of these leaders will see a new role in 3 to 4 years. So in the last 3 years, 70% of them have been through a role. And that we believe is the most important element of our development. And that's worked for us, and we sort of keep doing more and more of that. So anybody who's in a very senior leadership position in the company would have done 3 or 4 very, very different roles. We found that people learn a lot when they shift the role. The number of other things, the coaching, etc. I think while we've done a lot of that, I wouldn't say that I'm very happy with that. Those are things that I think they have given us results that we thought they would give us. But we keep working on that. The Young Leader Development Program was something that we came up with a couple of years back, and it was driven by a very interesting thing. We had a very low attrition in our key talent program because it was directed, very different compensation, so we never lost people in that category. But you always struggle to get people into that group. So then we figured out that what was happening is that people who were coming in, extremely good people, in the initial years, because there was nothing targeted at them, you would lose them. So we said, identify them very early on and ring fence them. So whatever, do different compensation, talk to them, tell them you're hypo, you're going to get into these big roles, and expose them to senior leadership and all of that. And now, having done that, we are seeing the attrition rates there drop very significantly. Organization is like this, and they're 1/5 of that. So there, the number of programs is not very high, but at this point, we're just limiting it to a little bit, ensuring that they stay with the organization for the first 5-6 years so that they can move on.
I think a lot of what I've heard here is replicated around here also, in terms of very targeted, aggressive succession planning, as I was mentioning, very customized, focus on key individuals that we want to take forward. Part rotation being a very important piece today for us. The one, the Young Leaders program that was launched this year is 2 years behind, primarily because all our surveys tell us the levels of engagement being lower and the dissatisfaction levels being high at the entry level, 5 years, 6 years, no interventions. How do we make sure that these people remain engaged with us, high performers? So those things are all there. The one thing that might be different, may not be different, is we have the what we call our JLMT program, targeted at fresh IIM graduates with experience. So about 6 years ago, we started cadre building at the entry level. This is our leadership profile program for all you IIM students sitting out there. That is a general management profile with a very, very fast, aggressive track to making you senior leaders in as little as 8 to 10 years with demonstrated ability. Again, let's kind of get away from the age barriers, put people into very challenging positions. We're going to get into a new demography, new market, new product, Botswana, Dubai, West Africa. In fact, our West Africa country head is a ex-JLMD, 6 years into the company. He said, okay, now go there and get the West African market going. So we are believing that there is some internal cadre building to be done from grounds up, and empowering these people from very early on. But I could not agree more that the environment has to be right if you're going to succeed in these areas. And leadership development does play a very important role in meeting our goals in the long term.
Sir, you have mentioned the early on initiation of these programs. So I would like to look upon this facet that leadership development, we are looking at as a continuous process. So we see that many business schools, they impart it as a fixed duration course, and many organizations, they incorporate it as a small modules covered by employees when they are with their company. So I would like to know, in your view, what is the right stage in an employee's career wherein he or she has to undergo a leadership development program?
First of all, I think business schools can do very little to help develop leaders. I'm sorry, it's an ongoing process. I think leadership development can start at any time in your career. I don't know what's the right time. Experiences in life, on-the-job experiences, certain situations you get. I mean, I always have some theories here, but one of my theories is that everybody is a leader, potential leader. And leadership is best demonstrated in situations. And almost anybody can get into a situation where he or she will get an opportunity to demonstrate leadership ability. And if you are in that situation, it is your cue to take on that opportunity and demonstrate leadership ability. I'm glad that business schools are addressing some basic issues, but it's a lifelong learning process. And it'll be shaped by experiences over time, both personal and professional experiences, that'll help you develop as a leader. And I agree with what we talked about, the knowing, the doing, and the being aspect. I think the hardest part is the being part. Again, the more you get into understanding yourself, the issues of, I strongly believe in authentic leadership. That is, are you really authentic? That is, you walk the walk. People truly believe in you as an authentic leader. So I think this is a skill that you need to start developing from now. There is no right time to begin, but it's now.
I agree with that. In terms of what you can do with your organizations, I think if you have a program a year, once in 2 years, I think it's a continuous process. It has to be in the way you interface with people, and clearly you can't do it for everyone. But once you identify the people, the number of things that need to go across to them, how you deal with them, what kind of assignments you're giving them, all of those have to be opportunities for learning. It has to be a continuous process. It can't be.
Sir, as we see that these kinds of programs are highly customized, and also we are agreeing to the point that it's a continuous process which should be going on for all the employees. So during current times when global economies have been highly volatile and cost optimization is almost the norm, how challenging is for the organization to invest in such kind of customized leadership programs?
So going back to the number of employees issue, I don't think you can do it for everyone. So which is why it is important for you to articulate, what is the population that you're looking at, who are the people you're looking at, what are the characteristics you're looking at. Once you articulate that, you're very clear in your mind, and you don't have to then, you have to look at it like a building. You have these beams and columns, right? And that is what the building stands on. So it is like that. They have to be the strongest part of your organization, and that's why you have to invest. So the point is, the return on investment there is phenomenal, or the lack of investment there can have tremendous consequences. So irrespective of where the economy is going, where your company is going, if you don't invest in that talent, you are going to face a terrible situation 5 years, 10 years down the line. And I think it has happened to companies which have not invested at the right time. So if you're going to cut budgets on this, it's just not sort of
Sir, if you would like to add anything to it?
Yeah, I can't help but agree with this. I think I'll just add a little bit of a additional perspective on that. I think the pipeline is really, an ongoing one. When I say the pipeline will come from, like talking about the, card-attending stuff, fresh hires, be it graduate engineers, be it management plans, or maybe creating divisional pipeline of 2, 3, 4 years of experience coming into place. So there are multiple ways that you do this kind of building. I think what is becoming critical, and this is stuff that as corporations we may not have focused on very intently, is spotting talent at the lower layers of the organization. I don't think we do a great job of that, at least. Admittedly, I would like to believe that there is significant room to improve. And that's where we are getting into, trying to catch them young, if you please, in the first 5, 7 years of the journey. Because that is where employees are most vulnerable to seeking opportunities outside. And that is where corporations are most vulnerable of losing talent who they would have kind of, moved till that stage. I think that's becoming critical. And that is alluding to the point that was being made. So once you have people identified, those are the people that you start making those accelerated investments in. It's not to say that you ignore the others. You cannot, because at the end of the day, you have to have that sustainable model where you have a large part of your population who are the doers, and they need to be made an investment. But that high order investment, you can only go for a small and there, I would like to believe it has to be on a low budget kind of approach. You need to do what is right. It means sending that person to a Harvard Soviet, if Harvard has that particular program. Then you're not counting rupees or dollars. You are really wanting to provide the right exposure to the person.
We, again, have not seen any significant changes to our budgets. In fact, we don't have a budget for that kind of interventions. It's very tight. 2, 3%, 4%. We're very careful. What we are also trying to do is use technology as best as we can, where we need to reach larger masses of people through e-learning platforms, internally built, externally. But largely speaking, it is whatever the macroeconomic conditions outside are, we see these as transition periods, and it's investing in our plumbing, building infrastructure. Because the investment is very critical, and I've not gotten a single signal from anybody that watch out what you're doing.
Sir, it's important that you have mentioned the use of new technologies here. So we have seen that the business environment has been changed quite drastically over the last decade. So how you see that the new technologies, they're affecting the leadership programs and the interaction of the leaders, top leaders with the pipeline leaders, how the whole technology scenario has changed the course structure for them, and how we can do it more effectively with the use of technology in imparting these skills.
We have barely harnessed the power of technology. We are, just because we have e-learning courses is pretty much it. That's it. I don't have too many things to tell you.
Here, I'll pass that.
Sir, so I really like to know one thing here, that because we see that at least IT or manufacturing, because most of the companies, they are separated geographically. So is there a vision that the established companies, they want to transition to the e-culture and the implications of it on the leadership in globally connected enterprise environment?
Yeah, I think the short answer to whether the corporations want to transform to a new culture is yes. I think everybody wants to get into what you'd like to believe is a seamless digital chain, if you please, on anything and everything. I think I agree. The power of technology, we barely got to the tip of the, barely touched the tip. We've not kind of harnessed the full potential of technology because we're still learning to deal with it. But I guess the biggest piece that technology does is 2 or 3 things. One, it makes more available to people. I think you need to have a very systematic way to do this. Otherwise, you could have what is called data and information overload. You will not end up doing anything. So, for instance, if somebody is given 50 e-learning programs and said, finish it in 3 months, it's not going to work. Okay? You need to kind of bucket that and bring that into a larger focus. The other piece that technology has done is got you to connect with people real time. That is huge because it's given you instantaneous, immediate feedback as to what is it that the people are wanting. And what is important is not just what you would like to believe in an organization to be. I think you cannot divorce what the people need is what the organization needs, even in terms of work. People want to work in many different ways. And I think organizations and corporations should provide for people to develop in areas that they would like to as well, would actually win this space. But there is huge amount of work that needs to be done to harness this capability of
Sir, we have looked across the technology aspect of it. In today's organizations, we have seen that motivational aspect is very important for employees. So I would like to explore motivational aspect. In case of today's organization, the motivational tools, they are different from those that are used in past. And there is evident need for sensitivity and empathetic people management skills. So how do you make up when you have shortage of people with these skills? And can these skills be learned? Or organizations need to invest in hiring these people from outside?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Sir, I was asking about the being sensitive to the employees in motivating them and people management skills. So these are something which is very impactful and very essential for managing your employees in current days. So if you have a shortage of managers who have these qualities, so how do organizations they make up for those?
Are you talking about engagement?
In a way, sir. When you have to constantly motivate.
I mean, there was a speaker on the first panel that really captured it well on engagement. To us, engagement really begins with the culture of the organization, the actual role of the employee, and how well that employee's career and relationships are managed. I've not said this in order. From bottom down, the first thing is the role. The second thing is how well the manager owns the development and the performance of the employee, and above all this sits the culture of the organization. If there is any disconnect there, engagement is a very different piece. I'm just speaking of this in general terms. If you want to build on this.
Yeah, I'd just like to relate an anecdote. I think all this is stuff that can be happening, like great culture, needs to be there and so on. There was senior leaders that had a conversation with our founder chairman one time. He said, what this is strategically what we should be doing, these are the pieces that we need to put in place, etc., etc. And I believe my founder chairman had this anecdote, it's true. So he listened very patiently, and after a while he says, all that is very good, we must do. But the important thing is, when you meet with an employee, you need to say, Maje aave che. Okay, the important thing is, are you enjoying what you are doing? And I think, how do you do that? That you do by actually being engaged, connecting with the person. Is he enjoying what he is doing? Do you enjoy getting to your workplace every morning? Think about it. If you're not, there is something wrong with you. At that point in time, you need to have a serious conversation with your manager. Every morning that you get up, is it like, oh God, I have to go through this day? Or is it, let me get in there? I think that's the question that you need.
Yes, there's something I was, the Yash Group chairman, I was interacting with him last week, and he was talking about company values. He said, Prabhu, I have one company value, joy at work. But all my company values have to be measurable. So I said, how do you measure that? He said, when people are walking in, if they went from smiling faces to sad faces, something is wrong. Similarly, if people walking out went from sad faces to happy faces, joy at work's not happening. So, maja aave. So it rang a bell. These are entrepreneurs who are always thinking that way, because they probably love coming to work. They probably don't want to go home. So all you students who want to be entrepreneurs, think about it.
So just to add, I think the engagement, what drives engagement, I don't think that has changed over the years. It's basically that. Do your people enjoy doing what you're doing? The means of that may have changed, but fundamentally that's what is driving it. The issue therefore is, are managers equipped to do that? I think That's where the biggest gap is. And when we look at, we aggregated some data in terms of the feedback that people got at different levels. And when we aggregated that at a managerial level, and we found one of the biggest gaps was people management. So this is the feedback that people gave their managers, 360, and we aggregated that. So I think a couple of reasons for that. One is that in the last decade or so, the rate of growth has been so high that people have moved levels very quickly without, going through the phases. They haven't sort of matured in a certain role, so they've been given responsibility to manage people very early on. They haven't given the right inputs in that. So I think that has led to, some level of gap in terms of what would, mother of people manage safely. So I think some investment there is useful. We are doing that, but I think, it's again very difficult one to do. Very, very difficult one. Because if you have a business pressure, if you have, boss breathing down your back for numbers, you don't end up spending time with your team. You don't, you're going to push your team very hard. Not to say that pushing the team very hard is against engagement, but there's a way to do it. I think the key is you have to give people the time to mature through that, understand that, and then sort of be good at it. I think it takes time.
Mayank, I have a request. Since only 15 minutes remain, we are in a university and there are lots of students. I think we should open this up to students.
Yes, sir. So I'll just summarize what we have discussed till now, and then I'll open the floor for question and answers. We have discussed the traits of leaders. We have discussed what is differentiating leaders and followers. We have discussed the various policies and practices which different organizations in question are following to develop these kinds of programs. What are the limitations? What kind of customized programs can actually cater to these building of a good pipeline. So taking forward these points, I'd like to open the floor for any questions from the audience.
Many global organizations, none of the Indian organizations are up to the mark of the top global leaders like Apple, the Dells, the Microsoft. So my point is, in today's era, if any organization has to be a global leader, the one thing which is very much of paramount importance is innovation. So that is where. So do you think that leadership program can help in the context of innovation? If yes, how can we embed that in the leadership program that every organization, Indian organizations, are coming up with?
India has no global leaders.
No, we have global leader companies, but we are still not up to the top 10 global companies as yet. Though we have a lot of potential with regards to skilled human resources, a lot of people in the world is talking about Indian skilled labor, human labor that we have, but we are still not up there in the top 10 also. So are we lacking on the front of innovation, and which I think we do? So can we add that aspect in the leadership programs that different organizations has, trying to make people think innovatively through leadership programs? Because that is where I think we are lacking.
Numbers, if you look at the size of organizations and say that none of the Indian firms are there yet in terms of top 10, but we do have organizations which have grown in size and which are getting there. So you have to look at history, you have to look at the context, you have to look at where we began. And I think you have to look at the trajectory. There are a number of companies which are on a trajectory where 25 years from now, you will see some of them being global leaders. Clearly, and you have people here who are working for those firms, right? So you will see those. And just to take a name, for example, TCS, which was, virtually unknown perhaps 20 years back, is right there giving the global majors in the IT industry around the country. And who knows where TCS will be 25 years from now. So I think you have to factor in the where we started from and what is the context. And in light of that, I think we're doing a pretty decent job. On innovation specifically, I think, again there, some of the Indian companies are getting into product. You will see areas like pharma, etc., where there has been a reasonable amount of innovation. again, I would say some of it is driven by the opportunity, the context, where
has only recently joined the global sphere of competition and have to unlearn a lot because managing in the Indian context, managing within the local context is very different from managing in the global context, and there's a lot of learning that's happening there. There's the next generation that's coming up. The other thing, most of the global leaders believe in a different type of philanthropy and have really made a mark from the Bill Gates to the Warren Buffett to everybody else. And the Indian leaders, at least in this space, are just getting into this space themselves. There is a different mindset when it comes to philanthropy for the current and existing Indian leadership. I don't know if I'm answering your question, I'm just thinking through some of the thoughts. And again, it's interesting if you think about leaders. China has opened up much before us and has shown a tremendous level of progress in multiple dimensions. But think of one Chinese flag or one Chinese leader and come back to the end of today and go to the debate. So you can imagine that we just talk about Amazons and Googles, our mindsets are also different. So I just leave it at that.
My question is to the panel. I'm not a student, but still I think
of the recipe for creating leaders is an opportunity to fail. And but opportunity to fail contradicts directly with what a corporation wants to do. So how do corporates, in their effort to create leaders, create opportunities to fail? Does that happen or is that a myth?
I don't think it's the right word is opportunity to fail. I think it is the expression used earlier by one of my fellow analysts, leading as a key.
I think what I'd like to say is I agree, it's not about the opportunity to fail. I think as long as you do not make the same mistake twice, you're all right. And I think it is about creating, it's again about creating that environment. It's about creating that environment where do people feel empowered to take the ball and run? Do they feel empowered to say that if I am doing this in the best interest of the corporation, will I get back to work? And rest assured, as long as people, everybody comes in there to give their best to the company. Right? I refuse to believe that people come into work not wanting to do the best. So as long as you have an environment and a culture where you say, don't make the same mistake twice, you're all right. And when you're talking about hugely expensive mistake, now this might seem very simplistic, right? But it is again alluding to that safety net that you're talking about. When you throw the child into the pool, 9 out of 10 times do you know that child is not going to drown? Because by default, he or she will learn to swim. But what will you do? You always have a lifeguard hanging around, right? Just in case something were to go wrong. That's what corporations do. They have that safety net there, but the person who's around, he doesn't know about that safety net. Right? So organizations don't necessarily let people fall, but sure, they allow them to make mistakes as long as it's not.
We are running out of time, so we're taking only one last question for Dhruva.
Hello, sir. My name is Saurabh. So, my question is for Mr. Prabhu. He said that operations, it's actually related to the value systems. So, it was said that organizations they get people don't have right values. They should not stay in the organization. But what happens is people who become the CEO, in some cases outside hires come and become CEOs. So why is that happening in the organization?
The first one is trying to change the values are what I call the DNA of our value culture of our organization, where we go today depends on the company, the heritage, these are family-run, companies, whatever the case may be. So there's a certain value system that's ingrained, which starts defining the culture. So the point I was trying to make is that trying to operate outside this value system and providing people that are allowed to operate outside this value
shared a very vast, valuable insight in leadership development and different facets of it. Now, I'll hand over the control to the Master of Ceremony, Bhargav.
This discussion should go a long way in preparing us for our future managers and leaders roles. We have discussed about the demonstration of leadership in different situation and context. I think that benefits us definitely. Thank you, Mayank, for the insightful discussion. We now request Professor N. Viswanathan to kindly come on stage and felicitate the panelists with the mementos. Thank you, Mr. Ashwini Prasara. Thank you, Mr. Ravi Shankar. Thank you, Mr. Prabhu Agarwal. Thank you, panelists. We will now break for a short tea.